For over 3,000 years, the galaxy had known peace. A great agreement, the Silent Concord, was made between the many different alien species, a peace that bound the stars together. There was no war, no conflict, just harmony. From the tiny, peaceful beings on the lush green planets to the mighty, technologically advanced races, all had learned the importance of living without fighting. The Council of the Galactic Federation ensured that every species respected this peace, and they did for millennia. The galaxy had flourished in its quiet unity, and life went on without fear of war. Then, everything changed. On a bright morning in Earth's year 2107, an alien race that had long been silent, known as the Belinar, shattered that peace. The Belinar were a powerful ancient race, with technology far more advanced than Earth's own. They had lived in the far reaches of the galaxy, observing quietly as the rest of the universe grew and evolved. For centuries, they had kept their distance, content to leave others to their own devices. But something had shifted. The Belinar had watched Earth for years and believed that humans, with their rapid technological advancements, could one day threaten the balance of the galaxy. They saw human inventions, especially their rapid growth in artificial intelligence, space travel, and energy manipulation, as signs that Earth was about to become a major power in the galaxy. The Belinar believed this could be dangerous. With that in mind, they decided to end the Silent Concord. The message they sent to Earth was blunt and cold. The Belinar declare war on humanity. Your existence now threatens the peace of the galaxy. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath as the message broadcast across all communication channels. The Belinar's fleet, vast and overwhelming, moved toward Earth's orbit. They believed their arrival would spark fear. They had the firepower, the weapons, and the strength to end this upstart species before it could become a real threat. But Earth didn't panic. Not at all. As the message from the Belinar ended, the people of Earth sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then, as if on cue, a ripple of laughter spread across the planet. It started small, one or two people chuckling at the absurdity of it all. But soon, the laughter grew louder, as if the entire human race had joined in. It wasn't nervous laughter or fearful laughter. It was genuine amusement. The idea that these ancient, mighty aliens, who had traveled through the stars and declared war on a species that had only recently left its own planet, could threaten Earth was laughable. Human beings had faced far greater challenges before and come out stronger. From natural disasters to pandemics to wars among themselves, humanity had always found a way to laugh in the face of danger. Why should the Belinar be any different? On every street, in every home, on every broadcast network, the people of Earth laughed. 1,000 memes filled the internet. People dressed in ridiculous alien costumes, poking fun at the Belinar's intimidating threat. Politicians, scientists, and entertainers all joined in, not with fear, but with a mix of humor and defiance. It was as if the whole world had come together to say one thing: we're not afraid of you. The Belinar's warships loomed over Earth like a shadow. Their massive fleet, with sleek ships and intimidating weapons, seemed unstoppable. And yet, as they watched through their sensors, they saw something they hadn't expected. A strange feeling washed over the alien fleet as they monitored Earth's reactions. There was no terror, no panic, just humans laughing. To the Belinar, this was confusing. How could a species so young, so unprepared, laugh at something so serious? To the Belinar, war was always a calculated, logical decision. It was about dominance, power, and order. But the humans? They were unpredictable. They did not react the way the Belinar expected. They did not fear the unknown. They laughed at it. On Earth, this laughter soon turned into action. The world's leaders, who had been planning Earth's defense, didn't immediately take a defensive stance. They didn't run to their weapons or hide in bunkers. Instead, they began to gather in open forums and television broadcasts, speaking directly to their citizens, uniting the human race through humor, hope, and strength. You want to bring war to Earth? One leader said with a smile, standing at a podium with a world map behind him, "I think we need a better reason to get angry than some aliens who think we're scared." This new attitude quickly spread across the globe. People weren't intimidated by the Velinar. They weren't interested in war, either. They simply found the idea of a war with Earth to be absurd. It was as if the Velinar had shown up expecting to fight lions, but instead, they were faced with 1,000,000 human comedians. As the Belinar's ships continued their journey toward Earth, one thing became clear: humanity was not afraid. In fact, they were laughing, not just at the Belinar, but at the absurdity of the situation. How could a species that had conquered so many hardships be brought to its knees by an alien threat? The answer was clear to everyone on Earth. Humanity would face the Belinar, not with weapons of destruction, but with the power of their unity, creativity, and laughter. The Belinar had made a grave mistake, and Earth would soon show them just how wrong they were to think humanity was afraid. As the days passed after the Belinar's declaration of war, Earth did not panic. The laughter that had erupted across the globe slowly turned into a sense of unity and determination. People everywhere shared the same feeling. They were not afraid. In fact, they found the idea of a war with the Belinar to be so ridiculous that it only made them stronger. Across the world, citizens were organizing, not to prepare for battle, but to showcase humanity's greatest strengths: creativity, intelligence, and resilience. The world's scientists, engineers, and leaders were not running to hide in shelters. Instead, they came together in a way the Belinar never expected. In every country, experts in technology, strategy, and science began to meet. They formed teams to figure out how humanity could not just survive, but thrive in the face of this new threat. These teams included some of the brightest minds Earth had ever known. People from all walks of life, from artists to physicists, all contributing their ideas. They understood that defeating the Belinar wouldn't require the same type of military might that the aliens were used to. Instead, humanity would need to outthink them, outsmart them, and do what humans did best: find the unexpected solution. It didn't take long for Earth's first plan to take shape. The scientists decided that the first thing to do was learn more about the Belinar, their technology, and their way of thinking. The Belinar, it seemed, had made one very big mistake. They thought humanity was still in its infancy, still weak and unprepared for the galaxy. But Earth had been watching the stars for decades, learning about space, and advancing its own technologies. The first major step in humanity's plan came from a group of engineers who were working on quantum technology. They had recently created a new form of energy that was unlike anything the Belinar had ever seen. A form of power that could be harnessed for peaceful purposes, but also had the potential to disrupt the Belinar's advanced technology. The idea was simple: to use this new energy to disrupt the Belinar's communication systems. This would give humanity time to better prepare and outmaneuver them. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, people began to come together in their own ways. In major cities, the idea of fighting the Belinar with humor and resilience spread. Artists, musicians, and writers began to create satirical works that mocked the Belinar's overconfidence. Comedians took to social media, making jokes about how an entire fleet of warships couldn't outsmart a species that had figured out how to land on the moon. People began to send messages of defiance to the Belinar, messages not of hatred, but of humor, unity, and creativity. What surprised the Belinar most was that humanity did not react to their arrival with fear or violence. There were no panicked calls for war, no pleas for help. Instead, humans simply laughed. And that laughter was contagious. It spread across nations, reaching every corner of the Earth. People felt empowered. They realized that they had faced much worse than an alien invasion. From surviving wars to overcoming global pandemics, humanity had always found a way to push forward, to rise above adversity. Even Earth's governments, who had once been divided over various issues, put their differences aside. They realized that this was not the time for politics or division. It was the time for humanity to unite as one. World leaders gave speeches, rallying the people not to prepare for a fight, but to prepare for a future that involved unity and strength through cooperation. They reminded everyone that Earth had already proven its resilience, time and time again. At the same time, Earth's military began preparing for a defensive strategy, but not in the way the Belinar expected. Instead of focusing on conventional weapons, they worked on ways to use Earth's most powerful asset, its people. The plan was simple: use the collective creativity, innovation, and resourcefulness of humanity to neutralize the Belinar's technological advantage. The idea was that humans, in their ability to think outside the box, would find a way to outsmart and outmaneuver their seemingly invincible foes. Even the children of Earth joined in. Schools across the world organized defense activities where children came up with their own imaginative solutions to the alien threat. Some designed fantastical inventions, while others wrote stories about how humanity could defeat the Belinar. The creativity and energy from the younger generation gave a boost to everyone. The message was clear: no one was too small or too young to contribute. Humanity's strength was in its diversity, in its ability to unite people of all ages, backgrounds, and talents to face the unknown. In the face of what seemed like certain destruction, humanity stood tall, not with weapons, but with the power of its collective spirit. The Belinar had underestimated the resilience of the human race. They had thought that humanity, with its relatively young spacefaring history, would be an easy target. But what they didn't account for was humanity's unbreakable will to survive, to adapt, and to laugh even in the face of the greatest challenges. The Belinar, from their vantage point in space, watched in confusion as Earth's people worked together, laughed together, and prepared for whatever was to come. The message from Earth was clear, loud, and unmistakable. You may have the weapons, but we have something far stronger: our unity, our resilience, and our refusal to be afraid. The Belinar had underestimated humanity. As their warships continued to hover above Earth, ready to strike, the human race began to reveal something far more powerful than weapons or military might: their creativity and unity. In secret laboratories and open public spaces, a new kind of weapon was taking shape, not one made of metal and fire, but one built from the minds of the very people the Belinar had dismissed as weak and unprepared. This weapon would not only defend Earth, it would outwit the Belinar. A small, brilliant team of scientists, engineers, and philosophers worked tirelessly on the plan. They had a clear goal: disrupt the Belinar's communication and control systems, rendering their vast fleet useless. The Belinar's technology was powerful, but it was based on logic and predictability, qualities that Earth's new weapon would exploit to its fullest. After weeks of work, the project was ready for its first test. The team had developed what they call the Humility Engine, a device unlike anything the Belinar could have imagined. It wasn't designed to destroy anything. Rather, it was designed to overwhelm the Belinar's systems with an entirely new kind of energy: human creativity. The Humility Engine was a piece of technology capable of broadcasting an intellectual wave, a signal that would be so unique and unpredictable that it would confuse and scramble the Belinar's advanced communication systems. The idea was simple yet profound. If the Belinar relied on their cold logic and predictable patterns, they would be helpless when faced with the chaotic, boundless creativity of humanity. The team had tested the engine on a small scale, sending out random patterns of thought, sound, and light, each designed to throw off even the most sophisticated artificial intelligence. It had worked. But now they were going to test it on a much larger scale, sending the Humility Engine's waves directly into the heart of the Belinar fleet. As the device powered up, the people of Earth watched with a mixture of nervous excitement and pride. They weren't relying on weapons of mass destruction. Instead, they were putting their faith in something the Belinar couldn't calculate: the human ability to think in ways that defied logic. The team activated the engine, and immediately, the entire Belinar fleet began to experience strange and unsettling phenomena. Their communication systems began to break down. Signals that had once been crystal clear now came in garbled, jumbled messes. The fleet's artificial intelligences, which had once been able to predict every move the humans made, were now frozen, caught in a loop of confusion. The Belinar commanders tried desperately to regain control. They ordered their fleet to return to formation, but the ships moved randomly, as if responding to something other than the commands being issued. The aliens tried to send out countermeasures, but every time they did, the humility engine's signal only grew stronger, feeding on the unpredictability of the Belinar's reactions. The more the Belinar struggled to regain control, the more they were overwhelmed by the sheer randomness of humanity's creative energy. From their command ship, the Belinar watched in horror as their carefully constructed fleet was thrown into chaos. Nothing made sense anymore. Their once flawless technology, which had given them power over so many species, was no match for the strange, unpredictable force that humanity had unleashed. The Belinar had always relied on logic and control, but humans, they had never followed rules, never obeyed patterns. The very nature of their existence was to bend, break, and reimagine the world around them. And now, that very nature was the Belinar's undoing. In a panic, the Belinar tried to adapt. They launched drones and smaller ships to try and locate the source of the disruption, but it was no use. The humility engine's effects rippled out across the fleet, affecting everything it touched. The aliens couldn't pinpoint the problem because it wasn't something that could be solved with logic or force. The Belinar had learned nothing from their own observation of Earth. They thought humans were predictable, simple, weak, and unprepared. But what the Belinar had failed to understand was that humanity's greatest strength was in its ability to do the unexpected. On Earth, people watched as the Belinar fleet faltered. The humility engine had done its job, disrupting the alien forces, giving humanity a chance to regroup. For the first time since the Belinar had declared war, there was hope. It was not through overwhelming military strength, but through the power of the human mind and spirit that Earth had struck a blow against the invaders. And the Belinar, they were left scratching their heads. They had come to Earth expecting to crush a primitive species. Instead, they had been forced to confront something they could not even begin to understand: the chaos and brilliance of human ingenuity. The Belinar commanders gathered in their control room, watching as their fleet struggled to recover. Their once imposing war machines were now little more than confused, disoriented ships drifting in space. They could not understand why their technology had failed. They had underestimated humanity, assuming that Earth's strength would come from something predictable, something they could destroy with superior firepower. But instead, humanity's strength came from its unpredictability, its refusal to be confined by logic or tradition. The Belinar had underestimated the very essence of what it meant to be human. And now, they were paying the price. The Belinar fleet was in disarray. What had started as a carefully calculated war strategy was now turning into a complete failure. Their advanced ships, once symbols of their dominance, were now floating in space like confused children. The humility engine had done its job, creating chaos in the Belinar's communication systems and disrupting their fleets. But humanity knew this was just the beginning. They couldn't afford to let their guard down. They needed to press forward with a new strategy. On Earth, the mood had shifted. The initial laughter had subsided, replaced by a determined quiet. People weren't just watching the events unfold. They were ready to take the next steps. The news media, which had once been filled with jokes and memes about the Belinar's confusion, now broadcasted messages of unity and resolve. Earth's leaders, scientists, and military officials gathered in a series of meetings, coordinating the next moves with precision and confidence. The Belinar had made a grave error. They had assumed Earth was weak, unaware of the vast, untapped potential of human ingenuity. But now, with their communication systems still in disarray, humanity had the upper hand. In the United Nations headquarters, global leaders gathered, each one presenting their plans for Earth's defense. There was no panic, no rushing. Everyone worked together as one unit, As if the whole planet had become a single entity, scientists from every corner of the globe, who had been racing against time to understand the Belinar's technology, now shared their findings. Military leaders discussed strategies, not of war, but of securing Earth's future. The focus wasn't on defeating the Belinar with sheer force, but on using Earth's most powerful assets: creativity, intelligence, and resilience. While the world's leaders worked tirelessly to figure out the next steps, the people of Earth were taking action in their own way. Across cities, neighborhoods, and communities, people from all walks of life were preparing to show the Belinar that humanity wasn't to be underestimated. In New York City, a massive rally was organized, not for a protest, but as a demonstration of human strength and unity. People came together in the streets, holding banners and signs that said things like, "We're not afraid. Together, we're unstoppable. And our strength is our creativity." It wasn't about fighting. It was about showing the Belinar the true power of humanity. Meanwhile, scientists in various laboratories around the world continued their work on creating technologies to further weaken the Belinar's hold on Earth. A new strategy was taking shape. Humanity would use its own form of advanced technology to stay one step ahead. The goal was not to create weapons of destruction, but tools of disruption. A new breed of artificial intelligence had been developed that was capable of thinking in ways that were impossible for the Belinar to predict. These AIs were programmed to adapt and learn, changing their behavior in real time to counter any strategy the Belinar might throw at them. The Belinar, however, were not sitting idle. Despite the chaos in their fleet, they continued to try to regain control. Their commanders were furiously attempting to fix the damage the humility engine had caused, but their best efforts seemed to fail at every turn. They had never encountered anything like this before. The very technology they relied on was now their greatest weakness. They could not control the chaos, and the longer they fought against it, the worse it got. As the Belinar scrambled, they realized that they had no way of predicting what would come next. They had expected to find a peaceful, easy target in humanity. Instead, they found themselves facing a force that could not be controlled, a force that was as unpredictable as it was powerful. The more they tried to regain control, the more they became entangled in the very systems they had once relied on to dominate the galaxy. Back on Earth, the global community was celebrating small victories. The Belinar had made their move, but humanity had responded with intelligence, humor, and resilience. The Belinar had come expecting a quick victory, but they had underestimated the strength of a species that had always fought to survive, no matter the odds. What the Belinar didn't realize was that humanity's true strength wasn't in their ability to fight, but in their ability to adapt, to evolve, and to use their creativity to solve problems. In the heart of the Belinar fleet, things were growing increasingly tense. The fleet commanders began to question their own tactics. Had they misjudged humanity? Their overwhelming technological advantage now seemed meaningless. The more they tried to overpower Earth, the more they realized that the human race could not be beaten by weapons or logic alone. As the days went on, the Belinar's commanders began to discuss their options. There was no easy solution. The humans had shown them something the Belinar had never encountered before: true resilience. They had shown that no matter how strong the enemy might be, humanity would never give up. The war had taken an unexpected turn. The Belinar had believed they were in control, but now they found themselves facing a species that refused to be controlled. On Earth, the sense of hope was growing. People no longer saw themselves as victims. They were no longer just reacting to the Belinar's threats. They were taking action, moving forward with strength and unity. Humanity had found its voice, and it wasn't just about fighting a war. It was about showing the galaxy that Earth was no longer a place to be underestimated. The ripple effect of the Belinar's mistake was being felt not just on Earth, but across the galaxy. Humanity had become a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope for every species that had once been oppressed by the more powerful races. The Belinar might have thought they could easily dominate Earth, But what they had failed to understand was that humanity would never stop fighting for its place in the universe. And now, they were about to prove it to the entire galaxy. It was clear now. The Belinar had miscalculated. Their grand plan to crush humanity quickly had backfired in spectacular fashion. The war they had hoped to start with a single powerful strike had instead turned into a battle of wits. Earth was proving to be a much tougher opponent than they had anticipated. In the Belinar's command center, the atmosphere was tense. The alien commanders, once so confident in their victory, were now struggling to maintain control. Their ships were still in disarray, their systems malfunctioning, and their once dominant technological superiority was now a liability. The humility engine had done its work, throwing their fleet into confusion. Worse, it was clear that humanity was not only surviving the invasion, but was also starting to thrive in the chaos. As the Belinar scrambled to fix their systems, the people of Earth were moving forward with a clear and focused purpose. Global leaders had united in a way never seen before. Every nation, every culture, every community had come together not just to defend their home, but to show the universe that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. In a crowded conference room at the United Nations headquarters, leaders from every corner of the world were discussing the next phase of the plan. It wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. It was about taking the fight to the Belinar. But unlike traditional warfare, this new strategy was rooted in humanity's greatest strength: creativity. Military leaders and scientists alike worked together to refine the humility engine and explore new ways to disrupt the alien invaders. Meanwhile, the world's citizens continued their efforts. Across cities, towns, and villages, people of all ages were contributing. Schools held mock space battles, while local communities organized events to raise awareness about the alien threat. But it wasn't about fear or anger. It was about unity. Humanity was no longer just reacting to the invasion. They were taking control of their own future. In every corner of Earth, individuals came together with a single powerful message: we will not be ruled. Back in space, the Belinar commanders were beginning to understand just how out of their depth they were. They had assumed that their advanced technology would guarantee their victory. After all, they had conquered countless worlds before, effortlessly. But what they didn't expect was humanity's resilience. It was a force unlike anything they had ever encountered. Every time they thought they had the upper hand, humanity found a way to turn the tables. The Belinar's tactics were predictable: try to overpower with sheer strength, use logic to maintain control, and rely on their advanced technology to predict and subdue their enemies. But humanity had done something that no one had anticipated. They had flipped the script. Instead of relying on strength, humanity had turned the Belinar's own predictable systems against them. By using the humility engine, they had taken the one thing the Belinar couldn't control, their technology, and transformed it into a weakness. Now, Earth's scientists had begun to turn their focus to an even bigger goal. They realized that the disruption caused by the humility engine was only a temporary solution. They needed a more permanent fix. The key, they discovered, lay in the very core of the Belinar's technology. Their ships, their weapons, their communication systems, all of it was built on an energy source that was as complex as it was fragile. If humanity could tap into this energy source, they could neutralize the Belinar's technological advantage for good. The plan was risky. It would require coordinating massive efforts from Earth's top scientists, engineers, and military leaders. But the potential payoff was enormous. If successful, humanity could strip the Belinar of their most powerful asset, technology, rendering their fleet useless. As the plan took shape, the people of Earth grew even more determined. They had seen what humanity was capable of in the face of adversity, and now they believed in their collective strength more than ever. The world was united, not in fear, but in hope and purpose. Every country, every person, was working toward the same goal. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival, it was fighting for the right to shape its own destiny. In the final stages of preparation, the world watched as a coordinated effort launched into action. Global leaders made announcements. Humanity will stand tall, they said. We are not a species that can be wiped out. We are a species that creates, that innovates, that refuses to be controlled. The message was clear. Earth was not going down without a fight, and the Belinar were not going to win this battle of will. In space, the Belinar could feel the shift. Their once imposing fleet was now drifting helplessly in the vastness of space, their communication systems still shattered by the humility engine. The aliens could no longer predict humanity's next move. They had come expecting a world of weaklings, people who would cower and beg for mercy. Instead, they found a species that was willing to fight with everything it had. And not just with weapons or technology, but with a will stronger than anything the Belinar had ever faced. The Belinar commanders, growing more desperate by the day, began to question their original plan. Had they underestimated the humans? The more they tried to regain control of their fleet, the more humanity adapted and outsmarted them. It was as if Earth had awakened something within itself that even the Belinar couldn't comprehend. The war was no longer about conquering a planet. It was about surviving a force that refused to be dominated. Back on Earth, the people were ready. They had proven their resilience, their creativity, and their unity. They had shown the Belinar that no matter how powerful an alien force might be, humanity would always find a way to turn the tide. And as the final phase of humanity's plan went into motion, the universe watched in awe. The Belinar had come to Earth with the assumption that their advanced technology would give them victory. But humanity had something far more powerful, a spirit that could not be broken. The turning tide had begun, and now it was only a matter of time before humanity would show the Belinar that they had made a mistake they would never forget. As the days passed, humanity's strategy began to unfold with precision. Earth was no longer just a defenseless planet under the threat of an alien invasion. The people of Earth had come together in ways no one had imagined possible. Across the globe, nations shared their resources, ideas, and technology, all focused on one single goal: driving the Belinar off their planet and securing humanity's future. It was a unity that defied all expectations. In the United Nations headquarters, representatives from every corner of Earth finalized their plans. Leaders had long since abandoned the idea of simply surviving the invasion. Now, the focus was on eliminating the Belinar threat once and for all. Earth was no longer on the defensive. It was time to launch a counteroffensive, and humanity's strength lay not in brute force, but in its ability to adapt, innovate, and surprise the invaders at every turn. The first part of the plan had already been a resounding success. The humility engine had sent the Belinar fleet into disarray, disrupting their communication systems and rendering their advanced technology nearly useless. But the battle was far from over. While the Belinar were scrambling to regain control, humanity knew that there was still much work to be done. Their next move would be crucial. Scientists and engineers, working in secret facilities all over the world, had developed a new weapon, a device capable of disrupting the Belinar's most prized possession, their energy core. This core powered everything: their ships, their weapons, their entire fleet. If humanity could disrupt this core, it would cripple the Belinar's ability to fight back. It was a bold plan, but Earth's leaders had no choice but to proceed. As the new weapon, dubbed the Energy Disruptor, was prepared for deployment, the Belinar fleet, still in chaos, made their next move. With their communication systems in shambles, the Belinar were forced to regroup and try to rebuild their defenses. Desperation was beginning to set in among the alien commanders. They had never faced anything like this before. No enemy that fought back with such resilience, no species that adapted so quickly. The more the Belinar tried to regain their technological superiority, the more they were reminded of one truth: they had underestimated humanity. Back on Earth, the people held their breath as the countdown began. It was now or never. The Energy Disruptor, designed to target the Belinar's energy core, was about to be activated. Scientists and military leaders held their collective breath as the device powered up. The weapon was unlike anything the Belinar had seen before. Rather than relying on physical force, it used a sophisticated frequency to disrupt the delicate balance of the Belinar's energy core. The Belinar had thought their technology was invincible, but now, humanity was about to prove them wrong. As the energy disruptor was launched into space, humanity's hope was pinned on the success of the mission. On the ground, people across the world watched as the device streaked into the heavens, carrying with it not just the hopes of Earth, but the collective spirit of humanity. The Belinar fleet, still reeling from the effects of the humility engine, had no idea what was coming. They were still struggling to repair their systems, still searching for answers, when suddenly, the energy disruptor arrived at its target. The moment the device made contact with the Belinar's energy core, a massive wave of energy rippled through space. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Belinar's once powerful fleet was thrown into disarray once more. Their ships began to lose power, their weapon systems failed, and their once imposing ships were rendered useless. For the first time since the invasion began, the Belinar were helpless. Their technological advantage had been shattered, and there was nothing they could do to regain control. Back on Earth, the celebrations began. The global community, united like never before, watched in awe as the Belinar fleet began to fall apart. But humanity knew the battle wasn't over yet. The Belinar were not a species to be underestimated. Even now, as their fleet faltered, they were likely preparing a final desperate attempt to retaliate. But humanity was ready. The message was clear. No one, not even the most powerful alien fleet in the galaxy, could defeat humanity when it was united. The Belinar had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed that their technology would guarantee them victory. They had believed that they could crush Earth's spirit with sheer force. But what they had failed to understand was that humanity was more than just its technology. It was the creativity, the ingenuity, and the unbreakable will of its people that made Earth strong. The Belinar had misjudged humanity's greatest weapon. The Belinar fleet, now in total chaos, tried one last desperate move. They attempted to send a message to Earth, but their communication systems were still down. The message, if it had been sent, would have been filled with threats and demands. But no one on Earth was afraid anymore. There were no more fears of alien invaders. Humanity had faced the greatest challenge of its existence, and it had come out victorious. The fight wasn't over yet, but the tide had turned, and there was no going back. As the Belinar fleet floated helplessly in space, Earth's leaders began to discuss their next move. There was no need for further destruction. The Belinar had been defeated, not by weapons or violence, but by the sheer strength of humanity's unity, resilience, and creativity. Earth had shown the galaxy that humanity would never be controlled, never be dominated. The Belinar had tried to crush them, but instead, humanity had risen to the challenge and proved that it was a force to be reckoned with. The final push had begun, and humanity was ready to finish what it had started. The Belinar had made their mistake. They had underestimated humanity, and now they would learn that no power in the galaxy could stand against Earth's resolve. The universe would never forget the lesson humanity had just taught. The Belinar fleet was now little more than a floating collection of malfunctioning ships, their once powerful technology reduced to mere scraps. Earth had achieved what was once thought impossible, not through brute force, but through unity, creativity, and the unwavering spirit of its people. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it was not to be underestimated. In the wake of the energy disruptor's success, the world was buzzing with excitement. The sense of triumph was palpable. News networks broadcasted the victory around the globe, and people gathered in the streets, not just to celebrate, but to honor the spirit that had driven them to this moment. The Belinar had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, and now the invaders were feeling the consequences of their miscalculation. As Earth's leaders began to assess the situation, they knew that the Belinar threat was far from over. The alien fleet may have been crippled, but there was still the possibility of retaliation. The Belenar were not a species that would simply accept defeat. Their pride would not allow it. But humanity was prepared. No longer was Earth a planet under siege. It was now the world of the unexpected, where the power of human ingenuity had redefined what was possible. In space, the Belenar commanders were struggling to comprehend the situation. Their once mighty fleet was in shambles, and their forces were in disarray. The message from Earth had been clear, and it was a message the Belenar had never received before. We will not bow down. The Belenar's overconfidence had been their downfall. They had believed their technology would give them the edge, but it was humanity's creativity and resilience that had tipped the scales. In the aftermath, Earth's military and scientific communities worked tirelessly to ensure the Belenar could not regroup. They knew that the Belenar would attempt to rebuild their fleet, but now they had the advantage. The humility engine and the energy disruptor had given them the upper hand, but humanity also had something else: knowledge. They had learned how to adapt, how to think outside the box, and how to use the Belenar's technology against them. While the Belenar were licking their wounds, humanity was rebuilding. The world had been forever changed by the experience. No longer would Earth be seen as a helpless planet waiting to be conquered. Now, it was a beacon of hope. Humanity had shown that even against the most advanced alien civilization, a united people could rise to the challenge. The aftermath of the conflict saw a rapid transformation on Earth. Governments that once operated in isolation now worked as a single, unified body. The shared experience of standing together against the Belenar had created bonds that transcended national borders. The people of Earth were no longer divided by the differences that had once separated them. They had proven to themselves and to the rest of the universe that they could overcome any obstacle, no matter how daunting. As Earth's leaders turned their attention to the future, they began to develop new ways to ensure that the Belenar, or any other alien civilization, would never be able to invade again. But unlike the Belenar, humanity's approach was one of peace and cooperation. Earth's message to the galaxy was clear: we are not conquerors. We are survivors, creators, and explorers. They would never seek to dominate others, but they would always stand strong in the face of any threat. Meanwhile, the Belenar, now fractured and disorganized, were beginning to reconsider their approach. Their once proud fleet, now reduced to nothing more than a series of broken ships, served as a painful reminder of their failure. The Belenar knew they could not simply continue their aggressive expansion without consequences. They had learned the hard way that the universe was not a one-sided game. There were beings in the galaxy willing to fight for their freedom, and Earth had just proven that. As the Belenar considered their next steps, their leaders began to reach out to Earth. But this time, it wasn't a message of demand or control. It was a message of understanding. The Belenar, humbled by their defeat, knew that they had to change their approach. The galaxy was vast, and they could no longer afford to view other species as tools to be used for their own gain. On Earth, the atmosphere had shifted. The laughter that had once greeted the Belenar's arrival had turned into something deeper, a sense of purpose and pride. Humanity had done what no one thought possible. They had stood up to an alien invasion and emerged victorious, not through violence or destruction, but through ingenuity, unity, and an unyielding will to survive. And so, Earth entered a new era, a time of peace, growth, and exploration. Humanity had earned its place in the cosmos. No longer a mere speck in the vast universe, Earth was now a symbol of hope and resilience. The rest of the galaxy would remember the lesson of the Belenar's defeat. Never underestimate the power of humanity. As the sun set over Earth, people everywhere looked up to the stars with a sense of wonder. The future was no longer uncertain. Humanity had proven that it could face any challenge, no matter how impossible it seemed. The Belenar had tried to break Earth, but instead they had created a new beginning, a new dawn for humanity. The galaxy had learned that Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored. It was a planet to be respected. And as humanity prepared to take its place among the stars, it did so with a newfound strength, one that would carry them forward into a bright and promising future. The Belinar had fallen, but humanity had risen, and the universe would never be the same.